Well, good morning, everybody. Before I get started today, just want a quick apology. Hotel I'm staying at here in Tucson, beautiful place, but the fire alarm has gone off twice in the overnight hours, and I finally just called it quits and tried to get some work done. So I'm a bit tired. And then as I was walking out to the car to record this morning, the sprinkler system turned on. So I'm a little wet and a little cold here in the car, but this forecast that's coming up is pretty fantastic in terms of what could possibly be delivered. And the map I've been talking over while you've been listening to me complain is what we had a year ago. Now, I bring this up because a year ago in January, under a La Nina, under an entirely different regime in terms of atmospheric momentum, MJO position, in other words, a whole different set of circumstances, delivered something similar to what we have now, but the differences are key. So what have you been staring at? This was last January's composite or average jet stream level winds. And what I was watching is the jet stream retract back over toward Japan and then really just scream from parts of like Mexico through Texas, coming into the south and southeast, and then rolling up the east coast. And what was important about this overall in this particular pattern was where the trough was located. All right. So the trough a year ago was sitting right here on the west coast. This was the beginning. Remember, it actually started at the end of December, but this was the beginning of the extremely wet time period for California that happened in January. Now, we had another one of these in March, but this was the sequence of atmospheric river events that just, was the beginning of the end of the drought right now, a year ago in California. Now, what's really remarkably different about this year's setup versus last year is the position of this trough and also the position of the cold air. So let me kind of phrase it, or not phrase it, but kind of contain it within that idea, and then we'll walk through some of the newest updates we've got. So I want to take you back again just to show you what happened last January. And this stripe right in through here was just under nonstop flow from the jet stream. So that trough sitting in this area just pulled the flow across. We opened up the Gulf. There was moisture to be had across a big section of the Mid-South, Midwest, all the way to the East Coast. We were drier, honestly, in similar places as we are going to be dry now. I'm talking about parts of the Northern Plains, Canadian Prairie, and parts of the Pacific Northwest, which were left out last year, not going to be the case this year. And it's all because of the difference in the position of the trough, and also going to be in the difference in the position of where the cold air is going to be. Now, this is going to be the most challenging aspect of the forecast for the next 7 to 10, maybe 15 days. A year ago, we were extremely mild, almost everywhere from about the 100th meridian east. And this is what made it so challenging to get the snow to come into the Midwest and to come into the East Coast. We don't have that problem this year. Early this morning at 5 a.m. Central Time, we already have, I'm just going to call it halfway decent cold air in place. What I mean by that is it is not ideal if you love snow. In other words, it's not like just this massive amount of cold air that's already been shoved to the Gulf Coast, to the East Coast, that's there to be kind of a setup man to drop things down and to set up what we call a very strongly baroclinic zone along the Gulf Coast, which helps with those Miller A, Miller B type systems. All right, I'm just rattling on here to tell you that we're part of the way there, but we're not perfectly there. And that's what's made it a bit frustrating in some of the forecasts of the precipitation timing amount and also the type. So we're going to get into all of that here in just a few seconds. But overall, what I'm saying about this pattern is it is better set up if you are east of the 100th meridian to get some snow. So this is what we've got right now. Early this morning, the all hazards weather map, 4:55 a.m. We're watching our first of what I think could be 5 systems over the next 15 days move across the country. Now, ahead of it, a lot of fog. We have winter weather advisories that have already been stretched out. That's what this shade of blue is right in through here. There's also some up here in parts of northern Minnesota. Winter storm warnings still in place for parts of California's Sierra Nevada mountains. Some strong winds with this system. It's getting pretty cold. I'm down here in Arizona. I'll tell you, those sprinklers kicked on this morning and I walked through them. We are under, in this area, a freeze warning. So it was a bit chilly. But anyway, the point behind all of this is to say that this first system, which you can see early this morning in the infrared imagery, well, let me take it back to yesterday. It punched a pretty good, kind of a hard punch right here into parts of California and Nevada as it rolled through. And then in the overnight hours, that first low is going to be the one that we're going to watch later on this week, getting into early weekend, be the snowmaker for parts of kind of the interior parts of the east. Okay, with that as just a backdrop, all right, I want to get into the bigger picture thing. So we're going to look down on the top of the planet, looking down on the North Pole, and I just want you to see as I play this forward the sequence of trough events that come across the United States. Now, as I play it, I'll analyze them individually in a moment, but what I want you to notice is look at where the position of these troughs are this year compared to last year. So last year, the depth of the trough was farther to the west. It was out over, just off of California. This year, the setup is displaced a bit farther to the east. Now, what sequence of events have led to this? Is it the MJO movement? Is it the fact that we have an El Nino sitting underneath that? Have we watched the repositioning of the coldest air across the northern hemisphere? There's a billion different reasons, but the end result is we have a trough that's further displaced to the east compared to a year ago. It is certainly helping that this ridge is not over Nova Scotia, but is coming into Greenland as we progress through the next 8, 9, 10 days. And what this is going to do is just set off multiple rounds of storm systems rolling across the country. And even as I go out there clear to January 17th, 18th, and 19th, to see kind of the Arctic kind of bridge itself up here with higher than normal heights just means crank, just get this going. Have systems rolling across the United States. And this is incredibly important to our overall drought picture as we progress forward. And I'm going to make a case for that in a minute, because as we look at some of these precipitation totals, we have to talk about the underlying factor, which is what is the soil temperature going to be? That may be the ultimate determining factor on who gets the snow to stick around, how deep is it going to be, what are the best ratios to use. You combine that with a lower temperature profile, and you have a better story to tell on who's going to get the snow and who's not going to get the snow. Okay, from here though, I got to confess something that's really important. Our best models, the GFS and the European model, this is the European flagship model, this is the US flagship model, their skill scores as of late have really dropped off of where they were back in December. And so as a result, if you've been frustrated with your local forecaster trying to tell you when and where you're expecting to see what, I want you to know that we're all struggling a bit using the models to predict where we think these next several systems, at least the next 3, are going to go in the next 10 days. So we have some model issues right now with the initialization, meaning that they're not picking up properly on the height pattern in the mid-atmosphere. That's what this map tells you. How well did the models pick up on the mid-level wind flow and therefore the trough ridge pattern? That's it, okay? So we are not in a high predictability time period right now. So given all of that, I'm going to give you some big picture things. This next product comes from the National Weather Service. It's a part of their Weather Prediction Center, WPC. I've shown it to you many times, but I wanted to remind you that this particular map has human influence on it. It's not just raw model output. And what you're looking at here is its projection of total accumulated precipitation through the next 7 days. Now, this is from their 0Z run, because I'm recording this a bit early to get the 12Z in just yet. But the idea here is to show you that same scenario we talked about Monday, or Tuesday, whenever we last talked. And that is the flow is doing something like this, which means we do have a large section here that is going to be left out of the biggest amounts of moisture. This particular setup is going to pump in a ton of snow into the Cascade Mountains, which desperately need. Remember, we looked at that on Tuesday. I think the highest flood threat is going to be in the south, southeast, and up the east coast out of this. Now, where the snow falls, let's analyze that here next. I want to begin with winds, though. Okay, I was just thinking about the overall setup here, and the wind is going to be a factor. With this snow that's coming down, we want to watch to see if the winds are going to be up there cranking. So this is an animation of maximum accumulated wind gusts. So I've played you already through Monday, and I've done that because the first system that goes through does not have the strongest upper level support to drop, to produce a big, deep, closed low that's just going to rip across the East Coast. It's going to be the second system that starts later this weekend out here in the plains. Now watch. From Monday into Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week, that's the one that we're concerned about bringing in the strongest of the winds. All right, so I wanted to maybe give you that dimension of the storm system or the next storm system first. But coming back to the high-res models, let's pick this up a couple hours from after I'm recording, around 7 a.m. We've got 3 pieces to watch. There's a front coming into the northwest. There's the low we're going to watch get to the east coast. But before that, we did have rain come off the east coast last night, and we had some snow showers on the backside this morning. So as we play this forward through Thursday midday, getting here into Thursday evening, that low comes out of parts of Colorado and Mexico, some snow in the panhandles, rain out ahead of this. I wouldn't be surprised if there was some thunder with some of this going through here. But watch what happens by Friday early morning. playing through midday Friday in the high-res NAM, getting out there to Friday afternoon and evening. Now you notice there's widespread snow showers north, but the low is pretty far to the south. And as this low kind of curls itself up, it does not have the best upper level support to rip off a system that deepens here over the Mid-South and then dumps snow in the Ohio River Valley. I do want you to be aware, though, that in the overnight hours going into early Saturday morning, we could get some mixed precipitation in some of the areas that I'm kind of highlighting right now. There could be some light snow on the northern side of this, but this system, as it pulls over the Appalachian Mountains, will set up early Saturday morning for some cold air damming and the risk of freezing rain right into this part of North Carolina, Virginia, possibly in West Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee. Now you do notice there's be some snow on the northern side of this. There's some snow on the back side of this. It's not heavy, but there's some snow back here. And notice already we're watching the next system come into the northwest, right into this area. Okay, with all of that, can I show you what the difference is between system number 1, which we just analyzed, that's the one that goes here to New England, and then the one that follows it. So here's the wave. See it right there? There's Thursday, getting into Friday, and then into Saturday. Now that wave that rolls through there, notice it's not got a lot of curvature, but there's some speed support on the back side of it. But this is really just the beginning of the next system. Now watch, as we go from Saturday into Sunday, look at the depth of the trough that digs, while the speed of that jet ahead of it exits quickly. One of the big things that this is going to allow to have happen is colder air comes in behind this, deepening the trough behind it. It comes in with a bit of positive tilt, but the thing I'm most excited about early Monday is that we have the fastest winds on the base of the trough coming off of the mountains. This is Meteorology 101. When I used to teach at the University of Illinois, we get into the winter storm section. This was the textbook case we always gave them. Like, if you have speed at the base of your trough, you're going to enhance your upper level divergence, which is what ultimately removes the air from the column, lowering the pressure, upsetting the equilibrium, forcing the atmosphere to just send air spiraling into a low at the surface, getting it to rise and building these low pressure systems. And at the same time, you have the opposite effect on this side of the trough, where you're funneling air in aloft. You're just crushing it in there, increasing the pressure. It sinks, disperses, and in winter, it brings in a lot of cold air. This is a coupled jet stream. You can see one jet streak here at the base of the trough and another kind of on the top of the ridge here. And this is just going to give us great upper level support for a deep low next Monday into Tuesday and Wednesday. And the fact that the trough gets into this negative tilt means it's going to sweep through, deepening the upper level divergence, creating a powerhouse of a system. This is Monday to Thursday of next week. And we're not done. There's more. Look at the next system coming into the northwest. So, with all of that, can we compare the models? Now, I'm going to move through this quickly because I want to get to the end effect of it because we're going to do some regional analysis. But here we go. We've already seen in the high-res NAM, the first system, Thursday, Friday, getting into early Saturday going up the East Coast. Now, this has been a challenging forecast to figure out the ice situation and to figure out the snow situation for this section of the country. So the whole megalopolis here, right? From D.C. up to New York, including Boston, come back to Philly. This is a tough forecast. I can tell you the risk of storms is going to be to the south of this, cutting right in through this area. But where the snow will be is going to be a challenge. Now, by the way, as we look at that storm system come up the East Coast, do not ignore what's following it here in the Northwest. Snow in the Northern Rockies, snow in the Cascades, snow in the Sierra Nevada. This is the second system. So as one curls up here into Pennsylvania, both models picking up some snow. We'll look exactly at the snow in a few moments. System number 2 gathers strength. System number 1 exits. We're now going to come back to the plains. Here it is. That's on Monday, right here. And now Monday into Tuesday, that low comes out. Look at the Central Plains snow profile on this. The risk of severe storms to the south in the lower Mississippi River Valley. And the models, even though they've not been initialized very well, you saw the skill scores a moment ago, they are at least both next Tuesday morning at 6 a.m. Central Time, putting a low somewhere in Arkansas. And it's deep. And out ahead of it, storms, heavy rain in both models. And on the back side, what's going to be an absolutely maddening forecast to figure out that rain-snow transition. It's going to be somewhere coming out of Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri. That's at least the latest information I've got. We'll show you the ensemble averages in a moment. But this low is going to deepen. Remember how it goes from that neutral tilt to negative tilt? And as it does so, it's going to wind itself up. And the more tilt I can get in this, the better the chances are of the snow kind of coming right in through this area. Now, does it get back into Wisconsin and in Iowa, or is it farther east? I don't know. We're going to probably watch the models shift around in this a bunch, which is why you should just go every chance you get if you want. agweather.com, ag-wx.com, and look at this. In fact, you can pause my video and get all my URLs right up here. They're all available to you. So that storm system goes out, and I told you we're going to have at least 5. Well, number 3 follows it right here by next Wednesday. Now, as we watch this system play out through the Great Lakes, and the third system rolling into the midsection of the country by next Thursday, we're already out more than a week in this. So we just need to step back and see what we've got over the next 7 to 8 days. And I want to start with the ice side of this. So over the next 72 hours, the probability of accumulating at least 1/10 of an inch of ice. Remember, we are going to be watching some possible light freezing rain in this area here, but it's primarily going to be concentrated right along the Appalachian Mountains, the Blue Ridge Mountains, and through here, where you see we have better than a 50 to maybe at times up to an 80% chance at getting ice in this area. Watch out for this. I think it's mostly Saturday morning. That's what I'll be keeping an eye on. Now, I'm going to back out because what I want to do next is pull the country into the middle here and flip this over to snow. Now what we're going to look at is our guidance here on getting 2 inches over the next 72 hours. Now, we'll do a deeper look at the west, but because the first system is primarily going to be coming through, oh geez, sorry about that. There we go, let's back out. Coming through this section of the East Coast, you can see where the WPC is probably putting down that rain snow line, which means it'll cross I-95 at some point. If we step this up to 4 inches, heaviest snows right now are going to be coming out of Pennsylvania into New York. And if we step it up to 8, this is just over the next 72 hours, there's going to be a region through here that's got a 40 to 50% chance of picking up 8 inches of snow. Now let's just go back over and have a look at the system that follows it. So this is going to be the one, this isn't the system that follows it. This is the beginning of the current system. And we look at the best chances at 4 inches. And we see it's primarily in parts of New Mexico and in Colorado with the 2-inch number. There we go. Possibly getting into the panhandles and Kansas. So take a close look at that. Now I'll show you the west in just a few moments because I don't think these maps are going to help too much out there. But what I want to get to, here we go. We're going to do 3 models this morning. I'm going to start off with a model that's run out of Germany called the ICON model. There's been a lot of chatter amongst us meteorologists about maybe it having the best solution. And this is not a 72-hour forecast. This is a 1-week forecast. So this includes the next 2 systems for everywhere east of the Four Corners, and it includes the 3rd system for parts of the Pacific Northwest. Now, as you note here in the Cascades, we're talking about 3 to 4 feet of snow possible. The Northern Rockies picking up 2 feet possibly. And then you can see even sections of the Sierra Nevada grabbing over 15 to 20 inches as well. But throughout the Intermountain West, this is going to be a big snowmaker. And now you start to see coming out of Colorado, New Mexico, panhandles, Kansas, parts of Nebraska, the ICON model is delivering what could be some decent snow in through here. Now, before I switch to another model, I want to switch to the east with the ICON. Now, remember, this will include the 2nd system, which means through Missouri, parts of Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, we've got decent snows coming through here. And that's not to leave out Michigan, because remember, they got light snow coming before this. But I want to show you right now where the ICON is putting down that heaviest snow and look for that boundary to the south where there could be the cutoff between the rain and the snow. But in the interior, and this is using a 10-to-1 ratio, we have got pretty good shot at picking up maybe 8 to 10 inches of snow in places. Now, I say that using the 10-to-1 ratio, which may not be wise. The reason for that is what the surface temperature or the lower atmospheric temperature profile will be and what the soil temperatures will be. I'll show you those in a moment. But this is not the perfect setup with just a hard frozen ground and just this great cold lower level of the atmosphere. 10-to-1 may not be the right ratio. But while we're here, I'm going to switch this over to the GFS, which the 6Z run has probably come in. Holy smokes. The 6Z run made a bit of a shift. Can I show you the 0Z? That's the 0Z run. Now, again, 10-to-1 snow ratio. This is inches, all right? It's really going aggressive after this area. Now, I want to make this case again because this could be the most easily thing you could criticize me on showing you. Hey, you're showing me these maps. I look at these numbers and I'm going, oh, am I really going to get, is Peoria going to get 16 inches of snow? What I'm showing you here, what you have to be seeing is where the model's currently putting down the snow. The actual amounts still are yet to be determined because this system is next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We do not know. I don't know what the snowfall is going to be, but I'm looking for where it's going to be. And I want to compare it finally. Actually, shoot. Let's go back to the west. Here we go. There we are. Look at that. Some places up here in the northern, in the Cascades, grabbing, I mean, this might be some places getting 50 to 60 inches. Decent snows in the Rockies. Look at this. Out here in the plains. Let's now get to the last model I want to show you, which is the eSIM WF. Whoops, they got a new run that just came in as well. Let's go back to the 0Z and get you out here. Sorry, I don't have this queued up. There we go. That's 1 week out. Again, 3 systems in the Northwest. This is where they've got the heaviest snow, a little bit smaller area than the GFS, more closely aligned with the icon. And if we go east, we'll now see that it also has the heaviest snows coming out of Missouri, more into Iowa, but coming into Indiana, part of Wisconsin, Michigan. Now look at the difference here between the 2 previous models and where the eSIM WF is putting down its snow. This is an interesting comparison to look at these things. Now, you know that I don't trust any of these maps, right? Just want to make sure we're clear on that, which is why every time I just go to the ensembles. I'm going to stretch it out more time. This is going to go out 10 days, and I'm right now looking at the chance of getting 3 inches. Let's step it up from there to 6 inches. Okay. Finding this corridor in through here, this corridor here, of course what's coming out of Ontario into Quebec, and then the mountains. This won't do the justice to the mountains. 6 inches is nothing out here. So let's go up to a foot. Sorry, it's a bit slow. Come on, pick it up. There we go. Out here to a foot, there's the corridor. And if we even go up to 18 inches, these are probability maps. So there you go. Biggest snows, of course, here. Let's go have a look at the European ensemble. So this is the 10-day European ensemble 18-inch. Let's go down to 12. Probability of 12 inches. So you can see the color bar down here. And 6. And 3. Point is, the pattern's ready for this. We just don't know the amounts yet. That's the story I got for you. You know where the corridors are going to be, just don't know the amounts just yet. But be prepared for this, okay? It could be potent systems coming through. Now, the other aspect of this that I'm struggling with is the temperatures. This is from the GFS model. It's looking at 4-inch soil temperatures in Fahrenheit. Now, if we had some deep cold air locking in freezing conditions down to 4 inches, this would be a whole different forecast. But I'm all the way out to Saturday, ahead of system number 2, and you can see where the freezing line is. That's the line right there. One down here is 50. That's 50 degrees. This one is 32. And what will be very challenging is by the time we get to next Monday, that's when this all starts with system number 2, watch the soil temperatures out ahead of this. I mean, we've got 4-inch soil temps here that are still above freezing, right where I'm expecting to get some of that snow next Tuesday, Wednesday. So that's what's going to be challenging on giving you an amount. It's the same story up the East Coast. The West Coast doesn't matter. The Cascades is rocks, okay? It's frozen. They're going to get snow up here. But this will be an interesting scenario in the midsection of the country. What we do know is it's going to be extremely wet in the southeast and in the northwest. 10 days, probability of 2 inches of total liquid equivalent is looking like this. Here's the probability of 4. And now we're talking about that area that is in drought down here, which we should get a new drought monitor about 3 hours from now. We're going to see this is going to make a major dent into that. And I do want to step it up. This is the chance of 8. So there is a flood threat down here across the Gulf Coast that we cannot ignore. But overall, if I take it back to the first map, which is the chance of 1 inch of liquid in the next 10 days, this is going to hit an area that we know is deep in drought, and we got to recover that soil moisture. So what I'm worried about is, as the snow comes in and as the rain is in ahead of it, it's going to make for some incredibly mucky and gross conditions here, but some of that's going to soak in. It's going to feed into the Mississippi, and that's going to help cure some long-standing problems. Okay, I got more stuff I want to share with you. Where's it going after this? Well, by day 10, we've still got this, which is why the week 2 forecast all show up wetter east, wetter east, wetter east. A bit of a slowdown in the southern plains. You can see it's drier in all the models, but because we've not broken down the Pacific jet stream to just stop the flow coming in, we got better chances of just keeping the country wet through the middle of this month overall. From there, though, what are the temperatures going to do? Well, this is where the story, in my opinion, gets really quite interesting, because we've repositioned the cold. If you go back to my videos at the end of December, where did I tell you the cold was? It wasn't in Europe. It wasn't in Russia. It was in Russia in early December, but it was over Greenland and over Alaska. Remember? Look at this. We've now displaced that, and there's now mild air here, which means we're going to start to open up the country to some colder air finally. So I want to show you the temperatures first. This is today's highs compared to normal. The coloring is compared to normal, getting into Friday and Saturday. So this will be the challenging forecast here for the rain snow line. And there's your cold air damming event that's got my risk for freezing rain. It's got the risk for freezing rain so high. So watch out for this carefully. As we go from Saturday into Sunday, there we go. That's the setup, the warm air out ahead of the next system. Then we get into Monday. Look at that. That's what the challenge is going to be. How quickly does this cold air advance to make the risk of the snow increase into this area? Because right now, the National Digital Forecast Database, if you're wanting snow in this part of Illinois and Indiana and southern Michigan, we've got to drop the temperatures off fast behind this low. Could it happen? Yeah, by Wednesday, it might do that. But out ahead of it, we're going to get some rain out of this. Now look at how much cold air is coming in behind this. If you look at the day 5 through 10 GFS forecast, this is a pretty sizable outbreak of some Arctic air. No, it is not linked up with the polar vortex, but it's coming through. And day 10 through 15, this is really beginning to invade out of Western Canada through the Canadian Prairie into the central United States. Now, the models are going back and forth on the extent and timing of this, but the reality is there's some cold air coming. And it's not just the GFS. There's your next 5 days. If we can do some map comparison, there's day 5 through 10 from the European, and then there's day 10 through 15. So there is cold air coming, and it's all complements of getting some mild air into parts of the Canadian archipelago and Greenland and Alaska. Remember, that's where you got to pinch the mild air to get the cold air to come in the middle part of the country. Now, to finish this up, how long does this last? I think it's all being determined by the MJO right now. To be completely honest with you, I think the MJO is our strongest connection. What it did was it came out of phase 1 and 2 and is currently sitting in phase 3. There are 2 scenarios I'll be thinking about. If we get a collapse and a reset back over here, keep the cold on. It's just going to come back. It's going to come back and come back. If we sweep through phase 3, 4, 5, and 6 out like this, that'd be scenario number 2, then we do have some mild risks in January, later in January. We're not talking about the next 15 days, I'm talking about beyond that. This will take 2 weeks to get over here. But the fact is the MJO is moving, and underneath it we have El Nino, which is currently at its peak. So what do these 2 factors really end up determining? They might end up determining a forecast map from mid-January to mid-February that looks like this. If the MJO sweeps over there into phases 3, 4, 5, and 6, then we reinvigorate the jet stream across the Pacific. That targets California again with really wet conditions, and that's what ends up giving us split flow that dries this area back out again. Now, this is later in the month. This is not now. This is later in the month. You get flow that goes back into that same old routine. Remember this? Talked a lot about that in December. There is some multi-model support that could happen. It's very much an El Nino look to things. But as we just think about it, I just want to point out, if the MJO does make that move, we could go back into that regime, and there's just some support that it could. The strongest rising motion is kind of taking these 2 paths, sweeping the MJO over here to phase 8-1, and then maybe returning back into that area. What I want to know is, does it get into these phases and possibly stay in the middle? What we can also see with this is look at where this suppression is going. It's going right back to South America. Now, I made a case on Tuesday about in South America, there's really wet weather coming in now, but does it last? And I said, if the models are wrong and the MJO progression doesn't happen and it gets wetter and wetter and wetter for the rest of January, that paints a scenario that's not good. But if it comes in with some decent rains now and then dries back out, they're likely going to be able to start harvesting closer to on time. Let me put that into maybe better context. This is your next 10 days. We've talked about this. Have the models trended a hair drier? They have. But this is where we've got the wettest conditions, right on top of the driest spots in Brazil. Take note of Argentina, though. Last year, Argentina was deep in drought. This year, we've got plenty of precipitation coming in there, which means Argentinian crops are probably going to be large this year. What about the dryness in the middle? Is it problematic? I would say no, because a lot of this area picked up on better rains earlier in the season. But if I take you from day 10 through the next 10 days, and then add the 5 days following it, so that's day 10 through 15, you notice that it doesn't show the same strength in the dry signal. I think a lot of that has to do that by the time we get to the middle of the month, this just means suppression over parts of Brazil. And the models are suggesting that while the next 7 days start to get really wet here, take a look at what happens when you get out there to mid-January. This is the time period, the 7 days ending on the 20th of January. The north goes back over dry and the south wet. Now, could this open up some harvest windows? Possibly. That's the way I would probably be thinking about it. But then we notice that if the MJO continues its progression, right about the time Safrina's going in, there is a drink coming in for it. And that will be important to watch for South America. All right, given my limited bandwidth this morning and the fact that I'm tired and still wet from getting hit by the sprinkler, I'm going to do one video today. There's a lot to discuss, but these are the main things I'm watching. I'll give you another one tomorrow. Hope you all have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.